Right then, a quick overview for diuretics. Now, what we've got here is we've got a Bowman's capsule, we've got a proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule right here, ascending limb, and this is called your principal cell. Okay? Now, what happens, right, is we've got this here is a transporter for potassium, sodium, and 2-chlorine. God, that's 2 chlorines. Okay, so 2 chlorines, potassium, and sodium will enter here. All right. What the cell does, these things here, which are all over the place. Okay, what they do is they increase potassium coming in, and they increase sodium going out. Okay, and they do that everywhere. Alright, chlorine, well, it'll go through some channels over here and then go back to the blood. And potassium, what potassium will do is it will be recycled and come in through here. And when it's recycled, it's going to come in through here. Because you've got more potassium, more electropositive over here, things like calcium and magnesium, which are both positive, because there's too much positive, due to diffusion, these two will leave the cell paracellularly. Okay, that's called paracellular when it leaves through the gaps through cells. Okay, and that will go back to the blood. Okay, now should we talk about, okay, so you've got, and the majority of sodium reabsorption happens here, or obviously happens here first, but second most is here. About 60% of it is absorbed here. Okay, now if we bring in this loop diuretic such as furosemide, it's going to come in through the Bowman's capsule, but the majority, well, not majority, but some of it will come in through the blood, and it will be transported through like transport mechanisms and pumps into the nephron, like this. So it'll come in, blah 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 blah, and it will find this here receptor and bind to it. So how can I bind to it? There you go. You've just bound to it. Okay. Alright, so that's your furosemide right there. Now what it's done is it's inhibited the potassium, sodium, and the 2 chlorides, sorry. And what that means is sodium is no longer reabsorbed here, therefore sodium won't be leaving, therefore potassium won't be coming in. Potassium over here, from the potassium here and the potassium there, won't be recycled, so it won't be going in through the potassium channels, therefore this won't become as positive, therefore you won't get as much calcium reabsorption. Therefore you get something like hypocalcemia over time with loop diuretics, and therefore this is all excreted. You've got more sodium, you've got more chloride loss, you've got more calcium loss as well. Okay, it reaches over here. Now what happens is these are sodium channels, so sodium will enter over here. Okay, we already said that these are sodium potassium ATPase pumps, and what happens is sodium will be pumped out and potassium will be pumped in. So some of the sodium that comes in will come into these channels because there's more sodium will come in, more sodium will go out, therefore more potassium will come in, therefore more potassium will leave the cell through these potassium channels. Therefore you get things like hypokalemia, loss of potassium. And that's an overview for loop diuretics. Loop diuretics are very strong because obviously a lot of reabsorption occurs here. Okay, next we look at thiazide diuretics. Okay, let's imagine this is now a thiazide diuretic. Okay, we're going to make it into a square. In fact, let's use a different color. Okay, so we've got thiazide diuretics. Whoop, whoop. Alright, thiazide diuretic is also coming through the Bowman's capsule and also through the proximal convoluted tubule through pumps. Okay, comes through into the nephron, through the loop of Henle, and it acts on the distal convoluted tubule, which is over here. Now, this pump here is your sodium chloride pump, and what it does is usually it will bring in sodium and chloride. Okay, chloride again comes through, goes through the chloride channels and goes back to the blood. Sodium, on the other hand, is going to come in through these and go out, and then potassium is going to come in. Okay. In addition, we have over here a receptor that's activated, and what happens is you have calcium going out and you have sodium coming in. Now obviously the sodium is going to come in with this sodium and it's going to be pumped out, therefore potassium is going to be pumped in. Therefore calcium from the nephron is also going to come into the cell. Okay? Now, what thiazide diuretics are going to do, they're going to come in and they are going to block this guy here. Okay? And should we draw a little man or something? There we go. He's a little happy man. That's really bad, isn't it? But he's holding it. Okay? So, they've blocked this receptor right here. And what that means is obviously you're not going to get reabsorption of the whole sodium or chloride. Okay? Therefore, you don't get sodium or chloride, therefore it needs more sodium for these pumps to work. Therefore, it's going to activate this, which is activated by the parathyroid hormone. Okay? And what that's going to do is bring in more sodium from the blood in order to work these pumps for the sodium potassium pump. Now, that would also mean that calcium is going to be more reabsorbed from the nephron, which is why you get things like hypercalcemia, an increase of calcium. Okay, now what we don't have in here now is we have sodium and chloride moving through the nephron because it's not being reabsorbed. Therefore, it's going to come here, and the sodium again will come in through the principal cell, through the sodium channels, and again through the pumps. Therefore, potassium will be in here and potassium loss. So again, you get hypokalemia. In this case, if with a loop diuretic, we didn't reabsorb the potassium either, so we get more loss of potassium as well over here. Okay. Another point to note out is that chronic use of these, chronic use of a loop diuretic, because you don't get the calcium reabsorption, it's a risk. You get more risk of osteoporosis because the whole thing about the bone resorption starts bringing more calcium into the blood because it's lacking. And in this case, because you have more calcium reabsorption, it's good for people at risk of osteoporosis. It reduces things like pelvis fractures. Okay. Another important point to note out is over here, because they're absorbed through pumps. So let's just say this is here is a pump. This pump here is shared by uric acid and all that and other stuff as well. But main point is uric acid and thiazides will be absorbed here, and also the loop diuretics absorbed here. If more of the drug is being absorbed here, it would mean that uric acid is less absorbed here. Therefore, you get accumulation of uric acid in the blood. Therefore, more chances of gout with chronic use. Okay? So that's your thiazide and that's your loop diuretics. Okay? That's done. Now we've got another one. We've got amyloid. So amyloid, this is a potassium sparing drug, okay, and this acts by coming here and it blocks these sodium channels. And by blocking the sodium channels, you don't get sodium reabsorption. Therefore, you don't get the whole sodium going out, potassium going in. Therefore, you don't get potassium leaking out. The problem with this, main side effect is you'd get hyperkalemia, so you get a buildup of potassium in the blood because obviously it's not being excreted. It's good to also know that you'd give these with a loop diuretic or a thiazide diuretic if they have a severe hypokalemia or if you want to prevent it. Another drug is, this is spironolactone, and you've also got it's a aldosterone antagonist. Okay, now aldosterone, which will come in, basically aldosterone, if I can just draw a receptor, aldosterone will come in and bind to this receptor, causing transcription of the nucleus in the cell, in the principal cell, and causing more sodium channels in the cytoplasm to go into the cell membrane. It activates sodium channels that aren't activated already, and it will also make new sodium channels, which is called aldosterone-induced proteins, and shove them again on the cell membrane. Again, and also the aldosterone will increase exactly the same three ways, but do it for the potassium-sodium pumps, ATPase. So you get an accumulation of all these pumps and sodium channels. And that's what aldosterone does. Now spironolactone will stop this. And by stopping the aldosterone effect, you don't get as much sodium absorption again. You don't get sodium loss from the cell, therefore you don't get potassium coming in. Therefore, again, you don't get potassium waste or potassium excreted in the urine. Therefore, again, this is also known as a drug that will cause hyperkalemia. So you can also use this for like the increase of potassium. And that is a really quick overview of diuretics. Okay, thanks for watching. Please leave your comments and thoughts below. And if you liked it, please like the video. Cheers.